going to talk about different stories in the Bible and how they relate to one another, and also how these stories relate to what's currently going on in the world today. And I made notes, so I'm going to be reading from my notes. So I want to start off with 1 Kings 14:24 and 1 Kings 15:12. During these times in the land of Judah and in Israel, they had male cult prostitutes. And so they would have rituals going on in their temples. And some of the rituals, they would use prostitutes, male prostitutes, as well as female prostitutes. And so once King Asa became king of Judah, he wanted to get rid of those male prostitutes and get rid of those pagan gods and the idols because they went against what God wanted. So he got rid of all of them out of the land. And then I also want to read to you, speak about Sodom and Gomorrah. We know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. There was twin cities that was very wicked. And so God sent 2 angels down to destroy them. And so they went to Sodom because Lot was there. And so the angels wanted to let Lot know what was going on so he can get his family out of there. And then once they left, they was going to destroy the cities. But I want to read to you Genesis 19:4-11. And I'm not going to read it all the way through. I'm going to kind of paraphrase it. And they called out to Lot. Okay, I'm sorry, let me kind of go back. The angels have made it to, they're in Lot's house. The men of Sodom saw them go into Lot's house, and so they want those two, they don't know the angels, so they want them to come out. And they called out to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them. I beg you," then Lot is speaking, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you and do to them as you please." So Lot was willing to give up his 2 daughters so these 2 men, not knowing that they're angels at the time, would not be violated. And so, but the men did not want Lot's daughters. They continued to pound on the door, and they wanted to tear it down. But the angels ended up pulling Lot back into the house, and then they ended up blinding the men so they were able to find the door. And it was men of all ages, young men, middle-aged men, and older men, and they all wanted to violate these 2 men. And then another story in the Bible that kind of coincide with that one story is Judges 19:22. There was a Levite who had a concubine, and she left and went to stay with her father, so he went to get her back. And so while they was traveling, it was getting late, so they stayed in the city of Gibeah. And so while they was in that city, a man came and invited them to his house because he seen them just out in the square of the city. So he invited them into the house. And so once he got into the house, it was him and his concubine. And the men who was in the town was the men of Benjamites. They was Benjamin. So they was all family because, if you think about the 12 tribes, the man was a Levite, and then he was in the city, and the city was ran by the tribe of Benjamin. And so as they were making they're talking about the men themselves, as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, worthless fellows, surrounded the house, beating on the door. "Bring out the man who came into your house, that we may know him." And the man, that master of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Since this man has come into my house, Do not do this vile thing. Behold, here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. Violate them and do with them what seems good to you. Like I said, you can see these stories are parallel. The men of the cities, they see new men come into town, and so they want to violate these men. And they basically want to, SA them and basically, just have their way with them and do whatever they want to with them. And what struck me about these two stories is that both men was willing to give up their virgin daughters to these men and say, you can do anything that you want to my daughters, but don't touch the men. And in each case, they did not want the virgin daughter, they wanted the men. In this particular case, they said the concubine, the Levite put his concubine outside, and then the men of Benjamin, they came and they went ahead and violated her. So all night long they was passing her around, violating her. And then when it got dawn, close to morning time, she was able to make it to the front door of the house. And when the Levite came out getting ready to go, he found, he seen her and was telling her to come on, let's go. She didn't move, so he ended up putting her on his donkey and carrying her back home. And I'm going to get back to that, and I want to kind of jump to what's going on now. When you look at these stories that's been popping up about Diddy, about other, what's going on in Hollywood, what's going on in movies, and how they have different sexual rituals going on, how Diddy was hiring male prostitutes. That sounds like what's going on in Bible time. They was hiring male prostitutes to have to be in, they was with their pagan gods. They felt like there was certain rituals they had to do in order to get blessed, in order to have favor, in order to whatever they thought they could get out of being with these male prostitutes in what was supposed to be a spiritual setting. That's the same thing that's going on now. A lot of these rituals that they are performing because they want to get in a certain status. They feel like, I want to either stay young, I want to have get more money, I want to elevate and be in different levels, be in different status when it comes to the elite. So they're willing to do these different things. And you notice a lot of times you hear stories about some, the men with women, just like with Cassie Case and other women who have been violated. But a lot of times you also hear about the men. It's more men sometimes in certain situations than with women. Just like these men wanted to violate and pass around the same way they're doing now. They're getting these young men who wants to be in the movies or want to be in music. They're getting them and kind of like passing them around. And when they through with them, they just cast them to the side. Just like they did with the Levite concubine, they cast her to the side. And when he got her home, she was dead. They just violated her basically to death. And when he got her back home, he cut her up into 12 pieces and sent her the pieces to 12 different tribes to let them know what happened. And so once they realized what was going on, 11 of the tribes got together and they went to the Benjamin tribe and asked them, hey, send out the men that did this so we can deal with them. They did not want to do that. What they decided to do is fight. The one tribe decided to fight against the other 11 tribes. And the thing I noticed about this also is when this happened, like I said, it's the tribe of Benjamin who violated the Levite concubine. And when the 11 tribes got together and they decided they was going to go fight them, they prayed and asked God what tribe should go up first to fight them. the tribe that God told to go up first was the tribe of Judah. So the tribe of Judah went up first to fight the tribe of Benjamin, but the tribe of Benjamin ended up kicking them behind. They lost. And so they kept sending other tribes up. And so the third go round, they ended up getting to the point where they started defeating the tribe of Benjamin to the point that they almost eliminated the whole tribe. It's almost like with the angels when they destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, everybody who was left in the city. They almost destroyed the tribe of Benjamin to the point that it was going to be no more. They had to stop because they needed, because of God, it had to be the 12 tribes. So they didn't destroy all the men of Benjamin. There was still some remaining. And so that's, like I said, that's the parallel I noticed in the Bible with the tribes and how they, this story of violating men went from Sodom and Gomorrah, and that same spirit carried on to the different tribes in the tribe of Benjamin. And then the other thing I noticed about the Bible is that when Jacob, and this is in Genesis 49, when Jacob wanted to bless his son, well, let me kind of go back. Simeon, Levi, Judah, and then they had one sister, her name was Dinah. All of them was actual brothers and sisters. They had the same mother, which was Leah, and then the same father, which was Jacob. And then Benjamin, his mother name was Rebecca. And so they were like they're brother cousins. They're cousins on their mother's side and brother through their father. And so when Jacob got ready to bless his 12 sons with Simeon and Levi, he told them that, they was full of anger, and their anger caused them to kill men. And so he wanted to separate them because he felt that they was very dangerous together. The reason that he felt that way, that they was dangerous together, was because their sister Dinah, she was out one day visiting other daughters in Israel. And then this man, I forgot his name, he seen her and he ended up violating her as well as kidnapping her. And then after he violated and kidnapped her, then he wanted to ask their father to allow, well, he told his father that he wanted to marry her. So the father went and asked Jacob would it be okay if they got married. But the brothers heard this and they was upset, they was mad because that was their sister that he violated and kidnapped. And so they said, well, the only way that we will allow her to marry is that if every man in your city gets circumcised. So they agreed to do that. After the third day of the men's being circumcised, only two brothers, which was Simeon and Levi, went into the city, killed all the men, and then they took their sister back. They also took the animals, all their wealth and everything, and they came back home. The father was upset because he's like, you brought shame on us, and if they decided to come up against us, it's more of them than there are of us. But they didn't care. They was like, he should never have violated our sister. So they was just mad. They didn't care. They went, like I said, they killed all the men in his household in that town and just looted everything and took their sister back. And so that's why he wanted to split them up, because he knew that together they would be dangerous. So what ended up happening with the Levites, that tribe ended up being priests, and they took care of the holy temples throughout the land. So they got spread it out throughout the land. So they never got land for themselves. They was like on, they stayed on different tribal lands with their other brothers in order to take care of the temple of God. And then when you look at when he blessed Judah, he described him as a lion cub. And then when you read Revelation 5:5, Jesus is described as the Lion of Judah. And he's like the king because God had promised that a king will always be on the throne from the tribe of Judah because of his love for David. And so Jesus ended up being one of the king, and he described himself as the Lion of Judah, just like when Jacob was blessing Judah, he called him a cub of Judah. And then with Benjamin, this is another thing I noticed. With Benjamin, he described him as, he said, he is a ravenous wolf in the morning, devouring the prey, and at evening, dividing the spoils. So he seen Benjamin as being a wolf, going and taking what he wanted, and then they will, divide everything up. And when I read that, I also think about what Levi did. The Levite did when his concubine was dead. He took her and divided her up. So it's almost like, even though the men who violated her was from the tribe of Benjamin, and so it's almost like he divided her up to show how they are, like they're ravenous wolves, because they went out to the point that they violated her to death, and they just took what they wanted, didn't care about her or anything like that. And so then the other, in Matthew 7:15, you also see this when it says, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inward are ravenous wolves. So you see that word used in the Bible twice, describing the personality of a person. And so with the false prophets being ravenous wolves, if you think about today's preachers who are not true preachers, who are not true prophets, and the only thing they want is money. They go in, they get the spoils, and they divide it up among themselves. They care less about the people. They come like they do care about the people, but they don't. All they care about is what they can get. Just like ravenous wolves, just like how Benjamin was described. And the other thing that kind of gets me about the Bible is that when the land was divided between two kingdoms, you had the southern kingdom and you had the northern kingdom. The only people that was on the land of the northern kingdom was the tribe of Judah, was the tribe of Benjamin, and was the Levites. And so that kind of stood out to me because, like I said, it was the Benjamins who violated the concubine, and the first tribe that went up to fight the Benjamites was the tribe of Judah. And so it's like these three tribes are kind of linked together. And you see in the world what's going on now in the world. You see that there's good, there's evil, and it's like this is kind of like a representation of what's going on in the world today, because there's nothing new in this world. So that's why a lot of things I see, I hear, I'm not really shocked or surprised about it, because they was violating kids back then. They're doing the same thing now. They were sacrificing kids back then. They're doing the same thing now. And a lot of times sacrifice is about, it's like with the blood, they feel like, okay, if we can get this blood, this young blood, it's like a rejuvenation to them. It's like a renewing to them. They're appeasing the gods. And the gods that they're appeasing is actually Satan. He cannot make life. And you notice, like I said, every time, the majority of the time, the people that are violated are men being violated by other men. That goes against God. And so Satan always goes against God. That goes against God. God told Adam and Eve, go out and populate the land. Two men cannot go out and populate the land. So the way they do it is they take kids that are young and very vulnerable. They essay them, and then they get that mindset and they do go out, not all of them, but then they sometimes go out and do the same thing. Or if they don't go out and do the same thing, they're more privileged to be with, choose to be with a man over being with a woman. So that's how they kind of repopulate the earth. So it's like a backwards thing of how God repopulate the earth with men and women having kids. They repopulate the earth by violating one another. Because even with I'm sorry, I kind of got off track. But that's what they do. They go around and they do that. And so a lot of times the men are more, even though they might be with women, they're more interested and attracted to men than they are to women. And they prefer being with a male over being with the female. And like I said, that's not in all cases, but it's in a lot of cases. So that's why they are like predators towards these young men who's coming into the industry, and the same thing with these young women. And that's why sometimes you see these people are being destroyed, because once they get what they want out of them, they just toss them to the side. They don't need them anymore. And they're just like ravenous wolves. They get what they want, divide the spoils, and they just move on. And they can care less about what anybody else think or say. So every scripture that I went over, I will leave that in the description box, so you can read over it yourself. And peace.